I'm aware that many of you have expressed a desire for online counseling, and to that effect, we have a sponsor who will help you and assist you in that respect. So if you will, go beneath the video, you'll find a link to our online counseling sponsor. They have a whole team of counselors that can help you. Practice self-care. Get the help that you need. Would you consider yourself to be a pleasing person? Actually, I hope you do. It's nice to know that you have a desire and a willingness to say, I really want somebody else's life to go better because of my presence in it. I'd like to please. I'd like to do what I can to be a positive influence on someone else's life. I want to make sure that they know that they matter to me. That's being a pleasing person. When we hear that term people pleaser, we often speak of it in a negative kind of connotation. And the reason is because sometimes we can take a positive characteristic and move with it too far to the point where it becomes negative. In fact, that's the whole subject of one of my books, When Pleasing You is Killing Me. There are times when you can have a very solid, pleasing disposition, but then it can go too far, to the extent that you wind up going into your own ditch emotionally, and other individuals can wind up feeling like it's okay or permissible to mistreat you. And so we want to maintain your sense of pleasing within a balance that says, but I don't want it to be a part of an unhealthy way of life. So to try to get to that place of balance, I want to see if I can pinpoint 8 ways that you can know when your people pleasing has gone too far. And I want you to take a little personal inventory and see where you might fit relative to these 8 awarenesses or insights. Now, one of the first things that we'll recognize that indicates that your people pleasing has gone too far is you allow others to get away with their behaviors or attitudes or words of disrespect. I remember talking with a woman, and she said, years ago when she first married into a family, there was a brother-in-law who was one of the most rude and disrespectful people that you could possibly meet, just constantly making mocking remarks or ridicule. And other family members just were kind of like, that's just kind of the way he is. Or I just try not to let him bother me. And anybody that felt like they could stand up to him, it's like, no, we just don't do that, because what difference is it going to make? Sometimes you need to know when to pick and choose your battles carefully, so I get that part. But there are times when you're in such an appeasement mode that you wind up just going ahead and quietly letting that very disruptive person know, go ahead and be rude. I'm going to let you get away with it. I won't set any boundaries. I won't establish any stipulations. Here's my face. Go ahead and slap on it. I don't think we need to go quite that far. A second indicator that you may have gone too far with your people pleasing is you can actually take it further, and you can enable that other individual's self-serving agenda. Have you ever had a situation where you wound up rearranging what you do to keep somebody else appeased? I remember one woman talking about how, and she was a middle-aged woman, and she had a very overbearing and constantly critical and controlling mother. And she would say things like, well, whenever a holiday comes along, whether it's Memorial Day weekend or Labor Day or Christmas, my mother has all sorts of ideas, or it may just be Friday night, and she just has other kind of plans that she wants to make for me. What am I supposed to do? And in her case, what she would do is she would just basically go along with whatever this overbearing mother would say. And when I mentioned to her, I said, well, what if you decided that you didn't have to do all of that? If she says, I'm coming over to your house on Friday evening, what if you were to say, well, that's not going to be a good idea? Or if she insists we have to do the holiday this way, and you have other plans, and as I was mentioning, it's like, wow, you mean I can do that? It's like, yeah, not only can you, you need to. Sometimes, though, you wind up being an enabler to somebody else's controlling ways. A third indicator that your pleasing has gone too far is you can buy into their obligatory requirements. In other words, controlling individuals love to put guilt and duty and obligation onto you. They have a lot of must and have to and should and supposed to. It can be little small matters. It can be large matters. I remember one lady came into my office and she had a cool hat and had a neat vibe about it. And she was so proud of it. And one of the things she said was, I had to wait until my husband left before I put this hat on because he won't let me do this. And it's like, well, it looks nice. And it's like, no, I can't do it in front of him. And again, it's like, well, what if you decided to say, well, that's just my fashion. That's what I want to do. And once again, it's like, you mean I can do that? It's like, yeah, you don't have to buy into somebody else's obligations. Or it could be someone at work that says, here's how we have to do everything around here. When in fact, you have other ideas. Give yourself permission to go in that pattern. Must and should doesn't necessarily mean that that's what you must and should do. That's just their opinion. How about a fourth indicator? And this is a big one. You find yourself being more of a reactor to the extent that you have lost your sense of initiative. Too many times, people-pleasing or pleasers go so deep into that one dimension that they really don't feel like they can take their own initiatives. If you have a preference or something in your schedule or a project that you thoroughly enjoy, but you know it might bump into that controller's way in such a way where they're not going to react well, it's like, well, you know, they'll get mad or I don't like that and before you know it, you play off of that controller as opposed to being your own distinct separate self. Has that ever happened to you? Or how about a fifth indicator? And this is another strong one. And that is, you know that you're probably too heavy into the pleasing and appeasing mode when you have a history of suppressing your emotions. For example, if you feel ticked off and frustrated and angry, no, I better not say anything about it. Well, that can lead to anxiety and that can lead to depression. I don't know if you've ever heard of depression as anger turned inward. Or sometimes you feel really hurt and you don't say a word about what creates the hurt. Well, that can lead to bitterness and resentment. Or maybe there's just a general discomfort that you have with somebody and their presence. And you kind of go along to get along. Well, that can lead to feelings of phoniness. Do you suppress yourself to the extent that you set yourself up for other damaging kind of emotions? That's an indicator. Or a sixth indicator that you appease and please too much is you have ongoing feelings of burnout. I've talked to so many people. It's like, I'm just tired. I'm tired. What's the use? I quit. And then sometimes they just kind of go behind the scenes and have their little quiet fantasies of the way life should be. Sometimes these people with burnout, it's like, you know, I'm just going to go do whatever I want to do. And they become rebels behind the scenes and they just turn out to be very non-cooperative. Burnout can be an indicator that says, I've tried that pleasing stuff, it didn't work, and then you wind up becoming somebody that you probably know you shouldn't, but you do it anyway because at some point it's like, I don't even care anymore. Or a seventh indicator of over-pleasing is you can have a walking on eggshells feeling a great deal of the time. There are times when you're in that appeasement and people-pleasing mode where you think, okay, if I say this, am I going to get in trouble? Or what if he or she learns of my disagreements? Is this going to lead to a big disruption or an argument? And you find yourself just being very guarded and cautious and calculated in the way you present yourself. That's what I mean by the walking on eggshells. When you do too much of that, it implies you're overemphasizing your pleasing tendencies. And then finally, and this is kind of a culmination of all of it, an eighth indicator is you're intimidated by that controlling person's anger, which is what they want. Because the whole thing about appeasing and people-pleasing too much is, I don't want to make the other person mad. Well, what if they do get mad? What if they have a nasty temper? Now, frankly, I find it to be rather uncomfortable when that happens. I find it to be something that's very undesirable. But you know, when somebody's a bully and when they try to force you into their mold, that's a terribly insecure way of doing life. Can you see that to the extent that it's like, okay, I know what's going on there. You're trying to make it all about me, but it's not. You're a person over here who's very disruptive. So as you're able to identify these indicators that you've overdone your people pleasing, I'm hoping you can continue to be a pleaser, but you can pull back enough to where there's also a good balance. I want you to be a pleasing person, but at the same time, you don't want to feel like you're being taken advantage of. You want to emphasize self-respect. You want to emphasize assertiveness. You want to emphasize just your own simple uniqueness. Let's acknowledge that personal fulfillment comes when you have a combination of being helpful and being self-preserving. And then I want you to recognize that all of that emotional stuff that I mentioned that can build up on the inside of you, your emotional distress can become a signal that indicates that you've gone out of balance and you're feeling very dysregulated. And my question is, when you're receiving those signals from within your emotions, are you listening? I hope that videos such as this can spur some good thought in you and can prompt you to make some personal improvements. If you've not already subscribed, I would encourage you to hit the subscribe button. You know, I have my Surviving Narcissism Network or channel, and we have plenty of subscribers over there. And we want to build this one up as well so that we can talk about a different type of format. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We'd love to have you along on this channel as well. If you have a need for counseling, if you have someone in your immediate area, I would encourage you to seek out counseling. That's something I believe in, obviously, down to the core of my being. If you don't have someone immediate, or you'd rather, we have a sponsor that has a tab below that would take you to online counseling. And it's very popular, and they're licensed professional counselors with experience. And so if that's something you would need, then I would encourage you to avail yourself to that. We also have links to my books, my seminar, our webinars, and our courses like Free to Be and others that are on their way, and other kind of resources there. Being pleasing is a good thing until it's not. And so let's focus on that word balance. I'm hoping that you can be a balanced person that says, I really like being somebody who's a positive presence in someone's life, but just not at the expense of my own self-respect. Practice self-respect, and in doing so, it hopefully will position you to have a life of steadiness and contentment. I'd like for you to have that.